You ever watch your wife get called just a housewife by a clipboard queen in yoga pant without knowing that woman once commanded naval operations halfway across the globe? Let me tell you what happened that morning. It was a quiet Saturday. Birds chirping, hedges trimmed, coffee steaming in my hand. My wife, Claire, had just baked 24 blueberry muffins and was carrying them across the street to drop off at the Hendersons. They in their 80s and love her like their own daughter. Claire was in joggers and a loose tee, hair in a messy bun, just humming like always. That's when she passed by Margaret. Now Margaret. Oh boy. Margaret's been running our HOA like a private fiefdom ever since she got elected unopposed. Might I add 4 years ago. She's got this way of walking like she owns every blade of grass she steps on. Oversized sunglasses, clipboard in one hand, judgment in the other. She looks Claire up and down, smirks, and says loud enough for everyone within 6 driveways to hear, "Your wife really ought to stay out of the way and let the grown-ups handle things. Just a housewife, right?" I didn't say a word. Claire stopped mid-step, turned slightly, and gave her a polite nod, just one of those tight, unreadable smiles, and kept walking. Now what Margaret didn't know was that Claire had just returned 3 days earlier from a consultancy at the Pentagon. She doesn't brag about it. She never wears the uniform unless it's required. Around here, folks know her as the nice woman who bakes too much and volunteers for garden cleanups. Nobody asks much about her work, which suits her just fine. But the truth is, me wife's a commander in the United States Navy Reserve. She's led anti-piracy task forces, orchestrated interagency logistics between NATO allies, and written training doctrine that's classified 3 levels above my clearance. But she never needed to tell Margaret that. Not yet. That muffin moment, though, that was the first shot. 2 days later, Claire hosted a tiny neighborhood gathering, just some lemonade and cookies on the front lawn, folding chairs, a few kids with sidewalk chalk. Nothing fancy. No fireworks, no DJ, no alcohol. 20 minutes in, Margaret storms in with a whistle around her neck, waving printouts like she's coaching a middle school soccer match. "This is an unauthorized event," she barked. "Violation of HOA Code 4B. No gathering shall exceed 6 participants without written board approval." One of the kids started crying, thinking the whole thing was over. Claire, calm as ever, walked up to Margaret, offered her a muffin, and said, "Would you like something sweet?" Margaret scoffed. "Don't be cute. Just because you bring snacks doesn't mean you get to break the rules. Go back to Pinterest or whatever it is housewives do." I swear, I could feel my blood pressure spike at Claire. She didn't flinch. She just smiled and said, "Noted." Then she folded up her chair, turned, and walked back to the porch. That smile? That was never surrender. That was strategy. Later that night, as I was washing dishes, she sat down at the kitchen table with her laptop and a government-issued tablet, typing away like it was a combat briefing. I peeked over her shoulder and saw the title, Operation Homefront. She wasn't making crafts, she was pulling HOA bylaws, municipal codes, and a digital spreadsheet tracking every citation Margaret had issued in the last 18 months. A lot of them were illegal. Several were fraudulent. Claire wasn't reacting, she was preparing. By Friday, she'd already contacted her backup. Not uniformed, not loud. Just 3 guests arriving at our place, smiling, carrying duffel bags and quiet confidence. One had a Navy tattoo on his wrist. Another wore aviators despite the cloudy sky. Margaret spotted them immediately and tried to throw her weight around. "Guests staying over 48 hours must be registered at the HOA office," she barked. One of the women smiled and said, "We're just here to support a friend." Margaret frowned and asked, "Support her how?" The woman leaned in slightly, lowered her voice, and said, "In whatever way she requires." Then she walked right past Margaret like she didn't exist. That night, a GoPro camera hidden in the ivy near our fence caught Margaret trying to peek through our backyard, muttering something about foreign agents. We didn't post it yet, but we knew it'd come in handy. The real storm hit the next morning, monthly HOA meeting. Usually nobody shows up, but this time, 20 homeowners packed the clubhouse. Margaret, standing at the podium with her usual smirk, announced a new rule. Anyone hosting unsanctioned gatherings or housing unrelated adults would be fined. She glanced right at Claire. That's when Claire stood up. She walked to the front with a folder in one hand, held up her Navy ID, and said, "My name is Commander Claire Whitmore, U.S. Navy Reserve, currently on assignment with the Pentagon. And since I'm on leave, I have all the time in the world." Then she handed a printed statute to the board, proof that the clause Margaret quoted was dissolved back in 2017. The room went dead silent. One board member whispered, "She's the one from that Arctic operations unit." Another just stared. And then Claire's Navy friends in the back stood up and applauded. The rest of the room followed. Margaret's hands trembled. Her clipboard slipped. But she wasn't done. The next morning, we got 3 citations in one envelope: unauthorized gathering, military personnel on premises, and noise not matching community tranquility. Claire barely blinked. She was already 10 steps ahead. By Tuesday, our guest bedroom looked like a war room. One wall covered in printed HOA documents, color-coded strings linking signatures, and violation patterns. She'd mapped Margaret's movements, cross-referenced contractor records, and discovered that half the HOA landscaping payments went to a company run by Margaret's cousin in Arizona. But Claire wasn't just collecting receipts, she was forming an alliance. She met with a retired public defender on our block, a software engineer with logs of HOA emails, and a widow whose grandkid's swing set had been forcibly removed by HOA bullies. Claire laid everything out: legal violations, tampered documents, audio files, surveillance footage, everything. They agreed to launch a recall campaign. But Claire? She wasn't rushing. She wanted Margaret to feel comfortable. Because when people feel safe, they get sloppy. And that's exactly what happened. Margaret sent a polished-looking HOA-wide email announcing a $50 weekly fine for visible garbage cans. Problem was, she had backdated the rule to 3 weeks before it was announced and the account listed for payments. Not the HOA treasury. It was a shell account. That was it. Claire called a quiet garage meeting. 5 trusted neighbors. Coffee. Printouts. Strategy. Step 1, a transparency vote. Step 2, full audit. Step 3, recall election. And the day of the meeting? The clubhouse was packed. Margaret tried her usual tricks talking about flower bed regulations and parking decorum, but the crowd wasn't having it. When Claire stood and raised her hand, Margaret ignored her. Then a second hand went up. Then a third. Then someone stood and said, "Let Commander Whitmore speak." Claire walked to the front, unfolded her packet, and calmly said, "I'm not here for drama. I'm here for facts." And she laid them out one after the other. Illegal fines, fake vendor invoices, backdated rules, a forged signature, a treasury balance that didn't match the records. The room gasped. Margaret tried to interrupt, but the crowd was done. One neighbor shouted, "You fined me $300 for a flower pot." Another, "You towed my car for being in my own driveway." Margaret screamed, "This is a military coup." Claire, still calm, replied, "No. This is a community taking back what belongs to it. And I didn't bring weapons, I brought the truth." The vote passed. Unanimously. Margaret stormed out, yelling, "You'll regret this." We didn't. The audit landed a week later. Turns out Margaret had funneled over $37,000 to bogus vendors, including a cleaning company that didn't exist. HOA money gone for years. She tried a lawsuit, claimed psychological warfare. The judge dismissed it in 10 minutes. Then she vanished. Rumor was she moved in with a cousin in Nevada, or started working at a craft store across town. We didn't care. A few weeks later, Claire received a plain envelope. Inside, a copy of her original fine for a supposedly illegal potted plant. But someone had scratched it out in red pen and written, "You were underestimated." We framed it. Not out of pride, out of reminder. The next time someone looks at your spouse and thinks they know who she is, remind them, gently, what happens when the quiet ones finally speak. And if you've ever had to deal with a Margaret in your own life or an HOA that's gone off the rails, drop your story in the comments. Do you think Claire did the right thing? Or do you think she went too far? Let's talk about justice, community, and what it really means to take your home back one spreadsheet at a time.